Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataki te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hei aki ana te atakura, he teo, hei huka, hei hauhu, te hei wā Māori ora. Nō te tahi ahau, nō marawai o ka topuna, kei WSP ahau I mahi ana, ko Gemma tuku ingoa, ka nui te mihi kia koutou katoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. What I have said to you in Te Reo Māori, the language of the first people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, is cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south. Let the gentle breezes blow over the land. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. I also told you that I live in Christchurch, but I'm actually from the deep south, right at the bottom of the South Island of New Zealand. I work for WSP. My name is Gemma, and it's great to have you along in this webinar with us. So I'm a Technical Principal of Engagement in the New Zealand Planning and Community Engagement team, a team led by Rachel Lawson. We have 6 engagement specialists, 31 planners, 6 sustainability experts, and 1 social impact assessment specialist. And there's some overlap between those disciplines. I have worked in community engagement now for 15 years and have a background in environmental management and planning. My passion is the people and providing them with the opportunity to get involved in decisions that impact them. As I am a firm believer that better outcomes happen when we are working together. But before we get underway, I want to let you know that there will be time for questions at the end. If you have a question, could you please write them in the question box of your GoToWebinar control panel. The presentation is available in the handout box as PDF. Unless stated otherwise, all images throughout this presentation are sourced from the Dunedin City Council. Climate change, hazards, risk, sea level rise, erosion are all terms that conjure up fear and uncertainty. But adaptation gives us hope and presents the opportunity to build resilience by going beyond technical solutions and bringing our communities along on the journey with us. How can we bring people into the climate adaptation conversation to help restore hope and bring about resilience for our uncertain futures? Throughout the session today, I will share a case study that is very dear to my heart, and I feel very fortunate to have been involved with the Whakihikaro Rakiatia Rotakitai St Clair to St Kilda Coastal Plan, where we worked alongside Dunedin City Council to put community at the heart of the climate adaptation journey, taking the community with us to improve resilience for the future. WSP's role within the project included assisting with the community engagement, which I'll give you insights on today, project management, and some coastal specialist technical input. Today I will cover the challenge that we faced, the engagement approach, the engagement methods, and share parts of the final coastal plan. In 2019, Dunedin City Council began their journey to develop an adaptive management plan for the city's most popular beach, St Clair to St Kilda, to create a forward-looking, sustainable plan for the coast, to help community understand the changing coastal environment with the aim to get community feedback early so that it would guide future technical work, so the council and the community were moving together in the same direction. The city of Dunedin is on the east coast of the South Island, and you can see that on the map there. The section of the coast that we're referring to today is a very popular beach, and it's underneath this star here. So the embodiment right under there is a St Clair to St Kilda coastline. And as I gave in my introduction, I live in Christchurch up here, which is about a 4-hour drive to Dunedin. And then I grew up down here, which is another 2-hour drive. So Dunedin is definitely a big part of our lives as we move through, and it's got New Zealand's oldest university, and the economy is largely based on the tertiary education sector. And an interesting fact about the planning of Dunedin was that it was planned in Edinburgh, Scotland, and the plans were then overlaid on Dunedin, which has resulted in some very steep streets because the topography wasn't taken into account. So in Dunedin is Southern Hemisphere's steepest street. Anyway, getting back to the coast now. So the challenges at each section of this coast that we face. So the St Clair end, you can see here, on the left-hand side has an esplanade and a seawall that is nearing the end of its life. And there are geotextile sandbags at the end of the seawall to reduce the edge effect of that, end effects of the seawall. At Middle Beach, there is a landfill under the playing fields, which is at risk of being exposed onto the coast. And at the far right end of the beach is St Kilda, where there are steep dunes made steeper from people depositing materials there in the 50s and 60s, and are also at risk of erosion. In terms of the community, prior to starting this project, there was an action group formed, and obviously the members there wanted to see action for this section of coast. There are political interests in the solutions, and there had been other technical studies done at the coast here with no real community support and therefore no action, and people wanted to see action. As you can see in these photos here, this is a bit of a zoomed in image now of the St Clair end, and you can see the seawall there and the access steps that go right onto some pretty hairy wild seas at times. And this is the Middle Beach, and you can see the erosion here at the edge of this road and the playing fields, which there is a historic landfill underneath. And this is a close-up of St Kilda, where you can see those steep dune systems, which has a road on top, which is very popular for people walking and recreating in the weekends. The coastal plan contributes to the sustainable development goals by trying to help reduce inequalities of adaptation to climate and to climate action. Our engagement approach, so planning for engagement was a key step. We took 3 months to plan, and we got stakeholder input into this process. We took time to meet with key parts of the community. The approach involved listening to the community first, to understand what was important now and into the future, rather than overemphasising the case for change too early and diving into hazards and climate change. We wanted people to be aspirational and thinking about a positive future. So this has helped us to work with the community to establish a direction of travel while being clear on the work that is still required to develop greater confidence in future investments and on what can be done now to get things started. The St Clair to St Kilda coastal planning engagement process was designed to be accessible, breaking down barriers that otherwise inhibit the voices of youth, family and other such groups that often find it difficult to engage with us. So you can see here New Zealand's Ministry for the Environment has issued guidance on coastal hazards and climate for local governments, so local councils such as Dunedin City Council. And in this wheel you can see it goes through various phases. Community engagement remains in the centre of this wheel, for those that may not be able to see. But on the outside of this wheel is what is happening, what matters most, what could be done about it, how can we implement the strategy, and how is it working. So in the context of Dunedin, there had already been quite a lot of work and conversation in the community about what was happening, and there was awareness of erosion and issues on the coast. So what we did was combined these first 2 stages, what is happening and what matters most, to get this cross pollination of ideas about what was happening and what matters most to the community from Dunedin City Council and the community. And then phase 2, what we did, what can we do about it? We actually broke those into 2 engagement phases. So we started with a broad management approach, and then we went down, drilled it down into more detail about actually visualising potential futures. And then we engaged on the draft coastal plan, and that was the end of this phase of the project for us. So in terms of engagement methods, we used a multi-pronged approach. We particularly for phase 1 engagement, we wanted to go broad, we wanted to be inclusive and bring as many people into the conversation early as possible to create a really robust database that we could use in subsequent phases. So we were at the university talking, we were out on this is on the St Kilda end, we were out intercepting people as they're walking on the beach, surf life-saving clubs, printmaking sessions at schools, using online tools, and we're using hard copy tools as well. So while we were doing this engagement, we hit COVID, and as some of you may be aware, New Zealand had quite strict lockdown conditions that we weren't allowed to basically leave our family bubble or our bubbles of our households. And so it made face-to-face engagement a little bit tricky. And so while we couldn't while we couldn't do the face-to-face, we got online and we did do some hard copy deliveries of information so people could start interacting with the process. And then we delayed that first stage, so we allowed for the face-to-face to come back and really get stuck into it with that community and into workshops and stakeholder meetings and these face-to-face events that you can see. Through the Dunedin City Council newsletters, we reached every household, and with over 2,000 people providing their feedback. And we had supporting communications to try and draw people to this project, informing people of what was happening so that they knew how to get engaged. So we had posters and brochures, hard copy surveys, flyers on the radio, newsletters, media releases, social media and websites, using business cards. That was another thing when we're intercepting people in the shopping areas. We could introduce them to the project, give them a business card to take away with our workshop or our engagement details on it, how to get in touch with us. And also outdoor signage, because when we realised that we weren't hearing from some of the people walking on the coast, it was important for us to try and tap into those people that were using the coast. So we had QR codes on our outdoor signs. Now, something a little bit unique for phase 2 when we were talking about broad management approaches. So we used a tool called 1,000 Minds, and that's a local Dunedin company, online company that use pairwise comparison tool to take the community's values and then generate the outcomes that people wanted to see. So we, rather than going straight to the outcomes, we wanted to be based on values. And so this tool helped us achieve that. And then when it got down to visualising in the future, these are some images that were created by Lawrence Elliott, a landscape architect in our Christchurch office, who helped us articulate in a visual way what some futures could look like rather than screens of text. And it was interesting because, well, as you all know, COVID just didn't go away for a lot of us. So what we had happen was that people weren't as keen to come out to workshops or be part of face-to-face events. So what we did was we curated that workshop experience online. And so as people stepped through the survey, they had small video clips where we had our client Tom Simon-Smith talking to the community about where we've come to and what we're presenting, and then the images that step through which they could provide feedback on. And this is a plan on the page of the Clair St Kilda Coastal Plan. We could see the community vision for the coast, and community-derived management objectives, and then at each part of the coast, some management options that were preferred by the community. It was important for us to create a plan that people could see themselves within, that was easy to read, and from the printmaking sessions, a lot of their print work ended up within the coastal plan too. Taking a dynamic adaptive pathway approach in terms of solution, this is one of the pathways for St Clair, where the current approach of the seawall will only go for so long, and at that point there's going to be a signal or trigger that's going to require alternative approaches, and these were the preferred approaches, and at this time there'll be further community engagement to figure out the best way forward. So some key takeaways for meaningful engagement. Not going straight to the technical solution was a key part of this work. We worked with the community to understand what was really important to them to direct the technical solution or the technical investigations required. Trust building. And I mentioned earlier when we were developing the coastal plan engagement strategy that we engage with stakeholders and mana whenua, people of the land. We engaged with them early and asked them how they wanted to be engaged. And when they saw that engagement process itself playing out, we were building trust. And that was one of the key things that we learned from that. Not only were we getting a robust engagement strategy, but we also, when we delivered on that, we're building trust, not just with the outcome of the process. So including your stakeholders in engagement planning is a really, really key thing to make it genuine, make it meaningful. Finding our hard to reach people. Now, throughout this process, we were iterative. So as we were getting feedback in, who we were hearing from and who we were not hearing from, which was more important for me to find those, who were we finding it hard to reach so we could adapt. So we weren't hearing from families, and we were aware there's probably people in the community that weren't wanting to communicate via reading and writing. So that's when we activated the printmaking sessions. We weren't hearing from people who were using the coast recreationally, so for walking, and so that's where we got the outdoor signs to get them to our surveys, but also got down on the coast to do some intercept surveys. So we'll go to you, we go to going to the people, going to where they are at. The engagement was iterative, so we didn't set the plan, and that was a plan to run out the whole engagement process. What we did was we started on the plan, and then we were reflecting all the time about and listening to some of the murmurings happening in the community to see where are we hitting the mark with our engagement, or did we need to change it up? It's that constant reflection was really key to making it a success and bringing more people into the engagement. And there was this education and engagement process between Dunedin City Council and the community, so that we were educating the community to build capacity to engage with us. And we had a genuine belief that we wanted to take you on the journey, so that whenever we were making decisions as a project team, we were reflecting on that the whole way through this process. It was also important for us to create a plan that could span political cycles, and having the community engagement at the forefront was really key to achieve that. So what I'm going to do now is just share a project video that just gives you a little bit of an insight into the project and the place. So this is Tom Simon Smith, our client from Dunedin City Council, who is on the St Kilda end of the coast there, standing on that walkway. And as the video pans around, for those that may not be able to see, it's panning around the coast from the St Kilda end back towards St Clair. And this is the printmaking session. That you can see there's a lot of families, a lot of youth, a lot of people that may not have engaged with other methods of engagement with us. As you can see there, the printmaking sessions are a really great way to get those families involved. But there were also a number of other tools that we used in each phase as well. So it was bringing together a number of tools all the way through. So multi-pronged approach so that people could engage with us in the way they wanted to. And as the camera spans around, this is the St Clair end. And you can see the restaurants and hotels and Esplanade there with the seawall. And now the geotextiles bags and the remnants of an old groin structure. And this is towards Middle Beach now, with the playing fields that have the landfill underneath them. So what's happening next? Well, the Whakihiro Rakiatia Roitakitai, the St Clair St Kilda Coastal Plan, has won a number of awards. The International Association of Public Participation's 2021 Project of the Year, and won its planning category as well. And it also last year took up the New Zealand Planning Institute's Best Practice for Consultation and Public Participation Strategy, but also its Nancy Northcross Supreme Award for Planning. So we've had access steps completed, some safe access for surfers, and this is a surf competition. You can see people accessing the coast. There's further investigation work. But while we didn't do a huge amount of technical work during the coastal plan preparation itself, that is underway now. And landfill investigations are included in that to understand the extent of it. And a continued monitoring program so we can understand when those signals and triggers might be reached. In closing, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the Dunedin City Council and their commitment to engaging with the community genuinely. Also, mana whenua, project partners, stakeholders, and the people who are passionate about their precious coastline. It was truly an honour to be able to read all of their feedback and generate a plan that reflected community views. Bringing people around climate change, sea level rise, hazards can bring about resilience and support for change. Let's put our communities at the heart of climate adaptation and build resilience as we adapt to our changing climate. Now we're able to open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Gemma, for a fantastic presentation. I will just mention quickly the housekeeping items. So the presentation slides are available to download in the handout box on the GoToWebinar control panel, and also you can continue to log your questions in the question box on the control panel. I will start with the first question. What was the most challenging conversation, and could a consensus be reached?
So I think the most challenging conversations came at the beginning when there was probably less trust in the process and people were unsure how things would go. And so those conversations at the outset were, people were engaging with us, but they were very resistant to trust that this process was going to play out, because they'd seen things happen in the community before that hadn't quite landed. And so those conversations were difficult to get going and start to build relationships to get this process underway. Consensus is an interesting one when we come to community engagement, and it was interesting when we were talking about values at the beginning, and you open up a process like this, you just don't know what you're going to get. And I think that's an exciting part, and I really enjoy that part, because if you were doing genuine engagement, we're open to hearing those different views. And through the values piece, it was really interesting how much similarities there were among the community, and setting the community vision up front early really helped direct the rest of the coastal plan. So I think in that regard, I don't necessarily see consensus was reached throughout the whole process. Not every member of the community were happy. At the end, we had one particular person, and when the coastal plan went to the council for the final decision to be made, and I remember this particular person saying that, I don't necessarily agree with the outcome, but I understand the process and it's been robust, and I hear my fellow community members. So sometimes it's not always about consensus, but actually bringing people on the journey so they can see how the outcome's been generated, and so that they can feel that other people within their communities have been heard, and they can see why the decision's been made the way it has been made.
Thank you. Can you elaborate what worked well and what could be improved?
Well, so I think particularly what went well was our robust planning, and the Dunedin City Council's commitment to work with the community in a genuine engagement, and the genuine and authenticity around learning lessons as we went. And so being able to iterate and reflect and say what has gone well, what do we need to improve on as the process played out. And I think that really set us up for honest conversations, the community, and transparency, which was really important. Improvement, well, it was really difficult with COVID, and I think we had really optimistic timeframes at the beginning of this process. And when you are working with community and wanting to take them on the journey, I think we can sometimes forget that some people within our community need more time or more information to be able to engage with us. So what I would say for next time is being a little bit adaptable, or putting a little bit more time in the process. And we ended up adding that time due to COVID and the community, because we were doing an authentic process. But I guess the lesson learned there is at the outset, allowing a bit more time for those genuine conversations to play out, particularly when it can be a lot of emotion involved and people need time. So just making that allowance for it to be truly community-led.
Thank you. Can you clarify if all same engagement methods were used at each phase?
No, so we stepped it up a little bit. So phase 1 included social pinpoint, an online tool, online survey, hard copy surveys, our beach intercept surveys, drop-in sessions, printmaking, and stakeholder meetings. So we started with a suite of tools for phase 1, and we added and we lengthened that phase due to COVID and wanting to also engage those hard to reach people we hadn't before. And once we got those people's information, we were able to go back to them because we created a really robust database. So the phase 2, we included the 1,000 Minds I talked about, an online survey, workshops, and stakeholder meetings. And then in phase 3, we used SurveyMonkey to curate that multimedia survey with videos as well as the visualizations, with workshops to talk that through, and some stakeholder meetings as well. So yeah, the phases, we did use some different tools, and phase 1 and phase 2 also overlapped a little bit too. So we continued our values conversation as we went into phase 2 as well. So we did adapt to that as we reflected on how things are working for the community, really thinking about how we draw them into this process rather than just being about us getting what we needed from it, and also listening to what was happening within the community, because people are talking all the time within our communities, and if we can really listen into that, saying, oh, I didn't have a chance to go to that because I've got young children at home, for example, those parents can then jump onto an online session. We can make that available. So there's things that we stepped up as we went along the way.
Thank you. The next question is regarding assets lost due to coastal erosion. It goes like this: what about people that may lose assets over time due to coastal erosion? Was there an alternative or compensation discussed?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there's a loss, and it's at points, isn't it, when we're starting to think about coastal adaptation, and I think that's where the emotion comes into it, and allowing space and time for people to think and consider, and starting these processes early, and getting community involvement early is really, really helpful. And so those people were met with quite early on, but at this point in the process, in terms of adaptation options, there's a few assets that will go and will be lost. But there's a understanding within the community that they could see this happening anyway, but what they were really wanting was support through that process. And so therefore, you're talking about that compensation. There were alternatives discussed with some of those people. Compensation, it didn't go that far, but there are conversations that still need to be had. And I think as we reach some of those signals and trigger points, that's something that will be at the forefront of our minds. And I guess that's one of the biggest challenges as well with this work is, we're looking at a really long timescale here, and all the funding opportunities or funding options aren't necessarily on the table right now. And so as a global collective community working in this space, we're all looking for ways to make that possible and how that will be. So I don't think all the alternatives are realised yet, and as time goes by, that's something that we know needs further attention and further working through.
Thank you. I will take the last question, and all additional questions will be answered directly by Gemma via email. How did you ensure you reached your audience?
Yeah, so how do we ensure we reach our audience? So we were doing a lot of that reflection throughout. So we had our targeted stakeholders that we'd mapped right at the beginning of the process through the engagement planning. And so making sure when we were getting the feedback in and all the conversations were coming in, that we were aligning just to check that we had actually robustly covered those people off. We were also really listening and talking to others within the community, and they say, oh, you need to talk to so and so, you need to talk to this person. So bringing as many people into that process as possible. And at the end of the process, what we were hoping was that we wouldn't have someone that wanted to have a say that didn't have an opportunity to. And so that was kind of a big factor for us in checking that we were on track, is that we were making sure that those that wanted to have a say could have a say, and opening it up as far and wide as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gemma, for a fantastic presentation. Thank you all for joining us today. You can still follow up with Gemma via the contact details shown on the screen, and I will hand over back to Gemma for the closing karakia. Thank you again. We will close the session after this closing karakia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First, before the karakia, I'll just share a small whakatauki, a Māori proverb that guided us through this coastal plan process. Mā te kōrero ka mōhio, mā te mōhio ka marama, mā te marama ka mātou, mā te mātou ka ora ai tātou. Through discussion comes awareness. Through awareness comes understanding. Through understanding comes wisdom. Through wisdom comes well-being for all. Unahia, unahia, unahia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairoa, I te ara takata. Koia rā e rongo whakaaria ake ki runga, kia tina, koie e taikie. Draw on, draw on, draw on the supreme sacredness, to clear, to free the heart, the body and the spirit of humankind. Rongo suspended high above us, draw together, affirm.